Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you right here, Monday night episode with co-host Will Miles. You can find him at Will Miles SEC in his work at Read and Reaction, where, well, you reviewed it pretty well, just like we did all weekend. Gators go to, get off the bye week, hosting Texas, and the hype died down the week before the game, but certainly by the time the fans got in the stadium, and there was a good bit of Texas fans too, game starts, team plays well, fan base starts getting behind it. The Swamp was rocking once again in the 29-21 upset of Texas. So we'll go back and we'll get your thoughts on it there. Will, right here on Gators Breakdown. We'll look forward a little bit too. We hear from Billy Napier on Monday, so we'll hear from him a bit too and get some of the thoughts of what he had to say. But all in all, Will, I mean, who knew how this team was going to show up on Saturday? But once again, coming out of a bye week, the Gators show up and get the upset win.
Yeah, I mean, thrilled that Florida gets the win, right? I mean, it's awesome that the Gators are able to get this one. Certainly, at least quells the narrative for a little bit. But at the same time, I mean, I'm sitting there when it was, 29-14, just going, where has this been? Where has this been? The commitment to the run, to come out and give the ball to Jaden Ball 8 times in that opening drive and be really consistent about it. And then, surprise, all of a sudden, the passing game starts opening up for DJ Lagway because the safeties start creeping up. Now, look, I mean, they haven't had Dallas Wilson for the first 4 games, and certainly getting him back made a big difference, right? Lagway looked like, honestly, he looked like an elite quarterback if you start looking at the stats. There's a couple of reads in there that I'm sure he'd like to have back, in particular, the interception that he threw down the field. But, they took deep shots. This looked like a team. This looked like everything we've been thinking they were going to be all off season long. And the only thing that you and I are both left asking is, why does it take 4 games every year to get to this point? Because this is what the team can be. It's just, it does. I mean, I guess the silver lining is that college football is no longer 1 loss and you're out. So, at least there's still something to play for. I mean, obviously, the team has to go on a big run here. And certainly the friendly confines of the Swamp made a difference in this one and have made a difference throughout Billy Napier's tenure, which I'm sure is something we'll talk about as we head towards looking at the Texas A&M matchup.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny. And maybe we would have gotten this. Maybe we would have got to this in this episode. But I remember us talking last week and Billy Napier talking about 2 angles of the game, or 2 angles of this offense that's got to get better. And we focused on them last week, and it was the deep ball, of course, because that's something we thought would be part of this offense with DJ Lagway and these receivers. Has not been there. And third down conversions. We focused on both of those aspects last week, and something, obviously they found during the bye week. Napier did say a week ago, hey, look, we're going to deep passing and figuring it out was a focus during the bye week. Pretty much telling us he was even going to call more of them. And obviously we did get that. Like you said, there was probably a couple more explosives Florida should have had in this game as well. But you could definitely tell it was the focus. Certainly Dallas Wilson coming in helps in that regard too. But with that, Florida's gaining a lot of yards on first down. It sets up better third down conversions. Florida's 50%. Probably could have, should have, would have been better if you could have salted the game away. But, for the most part, throughout the game, third down was successful for the Gators too. But, I remember us going back a week ago and trying to figure out what this team can do. Certainly going to those aspects because that's what was brought up last week. And, hey, there's only 1 game, and it's the game coming off the bye week. We'll see where it goes from here. But the focus that we talked about last week was there for this Gator offense.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line came out and clearly had been challenged during the week off, right? Those guys were mauling right off the start. But again, I go back to why does it take 4 games and 3 butt whippings to get to that point? They were committed to the run in a way they haven't been committed all year long, right? This was something where and I've even said this a couple of times, that if you're going to, in the first quarter, it's okay to get stuffed on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, because you need to, 1, establish you're going to do that, and 2, like the defense has to believe you're going to run it and be able to run it effectively to start to creep up. And, Jaden Baugh made some really nice moves. In fact, I highlighted in my post-game article that he made a really nice move on a 3rd and 3 to get a first down. And then he ran for 9 yards on the next play, where probably most running backs, it's like a 5 or a 6 yard gain, maybe. And that sets up the 2nd and 1 to Dallas Wilson for the touchdown, the long touchdown. And that's the thing I've been harping on the last 4 weeks now, is that you can't take the shots 1st and 10. You're not a good enough offense. You got to take the shots 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1 when you have the opportunity. They got one-on-one coverage 2nd and 1 because Texas was walking their safety up, and the other safety couldn't get back. There were a couple other times where Texas left one safety deep, and DJ Lagway was able to look off the safety and go back in the other direction. And so if you're going to give him single high safety looks, it makes it a whole lot easier for him to figure out what to do. It allows him to take some of those deep shots. But that all starts with having a commitment to the run game and saying, you know what, like, we might have to punt a couple of times because we're going to put this ball in Jaden Baugh's hands. But it's not a coincidence. The ball gets 8 carries in the first drive, and that's the only touchdown drive I think they've had all season that didn't have an explosive play. And then you start looking later in the game, and the explosives started coming, and they started coming because Texas was trying to generate turnovers because they needed they needed Lagway to make a mistake. They needed the Florida offense to make a mistake to get back in the game. So getting ahead of them then in many ways sort of allows Florida to do what it wants to do on offense. So look, I mean, they're up 10-0 after the first quarter. You were wondering whether they were going to try to hold on. At that point, they didn't. There were a couple of times where Texas got touchdowns. Florida was able to respond right away, and then obviously sort of holding on for dear life there down the stretch. Which the offense sputtered in the fourth quarter certainly, but at the same time, the defense gave up its fair share of big explosives there in the second half to Texas as well. And so it wasn't a complete game for Florida. But when you're playing a top 10 team, irrespective of whether it's at home, and when you've struggled as much as Florida has all year long, just getting the W is something you can build on. Even if we look at it and say there's still some stuff that could be ironed out, including clock management.
Do you want to let that one go? Nor should you. By the way. And look, we're not talking about the helmet part. Will had another good part in his article. A separate part about time management there from Billy Napier. So, hey, we'll get into some of these topics that we just discussed. So, the bye week adjustments, or was it just execution and energy? Napier talks about that. If they can keep this going, is this a multiplier? Is this just the start of something now with this big win coming out of the bye week over Texas? And then, of course, the remaining schedule coming up for the Gators as well. So we get into all this. Everybody hit that like button. If you're watching us live on YouTube or the replay, hitting that like button, it doesn't matter. Helps us out either way. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform as well. And if you want to keep the conversation going, head to gatorsbreakdownplus.com. You get extra episodes, those chat episodes. Of course, you can join in on, you get access to that Discord where you can just continue the conversation there with Gator members. And ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown happen right there on the podcast feed of Gators Breakdown Plus. All right, let's get to it. The first soundbite here from Billy Napier, he was asked how much of the results were bye week adjustments, and or was it just better execution and better energy from the team?
I think mindset was good. Was really. I thought I was impressed with our ability to get the energy level back to where it needed to be. I think sometimes when you go through challenges, it's tough to bring the enthusiasm required to do the level of work that we do, right? So players and staff. But I think we did that, and I respect the players for that. And then the staff did a good job pushing the right buttons. And then I think the players did a good job bringing input to the table, and I think it's important to collaborate when you're struggling a little bit. So we played better. It's that simple. I think we executed better. We blocked them better. We threw it better. We got open better. We called it better. I think all parts of it contributed to our success. So we got a good player was available for the game. That helped too. So in general, all things contributed to it. I think we need more of it.
Need more of it, yeah, for sure. Needed more of it a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, as well. What we're gonna do is continue to ask ourselves the question, like once again, why? Why wasn't the energy level there 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? Why does it take a bye week to find that energy needed for a big win? And I mean, I do like the collaboration part of it because this one has to be a little bit different. Granted, yeah, we all had high hopes last year of opening up with Miami and Texas A&M early on in the season. But, Florida wasn't getting the national love and the national narrative attention that we're seeing Florida get this year. And, there was a lot of confidence coming from the coaching staff, and there's a lot of confidence coming from the players. This is the best chance, and this is the best team we've had. And I honestly think they believe that, and we believe that. This was the best team Billy Napier has assembled here so far in his 4 years at Gainesville. So, look, I'm sure there had to be some really hard, tough conversations and some heart-to-hearts, these last 2 weeks about, hey, we are nowhere near what we thought we would be. We're not living up to how we can be, how good we can be. Let's figure this out. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for those player-coach conversations of this is what will help us, this is what's hurting us, this is what we need to do. And of course, I do agree with what Billy Napier says there too. And I don't know, maybe underselling it. I was certainly underselling it coming into the week, but I mean, if Dallas Wilson means that much, then okay, you give him a 6-star in recruiting because he deserved it. But I just, I find it difficult that one player means that much. But it probably was a collaborative effort. And going to one point you made earlier, Will, to me, it really does go along the offensive line having their best performance of the season. I mean, Lagway could have improved. We already know what Jaden Ball can do. Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, those guys running free in this game. But it wouldn't have mattered if this offensive line didn't take a step as well and give DJ Lagway the time. So it was a big collaborative effort, but so many ways to go about it. But it's they found something once again during the bye week.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's a shame that we come off of a win over a top 10 opponent and are saying what if, right? Like that you're just sitting there saying what if, because that is the potential of the team. This is its top gear is something that can compete with everybody in the country. But its normal gear is one that struggles against USF and against a Nussmeier-led LSU and against Miami. Like, it wasn't like any of those teams blew the doors off of Florida. It was just Florida was kind of pedestrian, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, I mean, look, yes, the offensive line was much, much better in this game. Certainly, if you're relying on one recruit whose name isn't Lagway to be the difference maker and be the difference between your offense, it's not like the offense went from average to great or it went from average to good or something like that. It went from putrid to elite. Like, they averaged 7 yards per play, which would be like top 5 in the country, against a team that had the number 1 defense in the country coming in. They absolutely dominated them. They went from the worst offense in the country to one of the best offenses in the country. And you're telling me that all they need is a week of rest and 3 losses beforehand to motivate them? I mean, let's just tell them all that they lost 3 games coming into the season next year. The thing
well,
that can't –
I joked with you during the game. I think I said this to you during the game. I was like, can we just schedule a bye week 1 next year?
Well, so I tweeted something along the lines of apparently DJ Lagway just needs to throw on one leg, and then yes, everything's fine because he injures his calf again, and all of a sudden he can't be stopped. Lagway was awesome, 21-28, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the 1 pick we already talked about. That QB ranks 180.4. Arch Manning, who actually was pretty good in the second half, He ends up with a QB rating of 140.3 with a couple of bad interceptions. So I guess good in the second half is in the eye of the beholder. But my stat, yards above replacement, Lagway's 2.93. That's Heisman level. And he was 5.74 in the second half because he averaged 13.5 yards per attempt. That's the guy we thought we were getting
There you go.
all year, right? Now, Manning in the first half was awful. He was negative 1.91 for yard, 2.35 in the second half. So Manning, I thought, actually was very efficient in the second half. Florida gets a couple of turnovers. It sort of makes their defensive performance look better than I think it was overall in the second half. But that's the reason why Texas made this close, is that Florida kind of went into a shell after the third quarter, and Texas did not. Texas opened it up, and Florida's defense gave them quite a few explosives. They wound up with 7 explosives for the entire game. The thing I found really interesting is if you look at the explosive pattern for Florida, they had an opening drive, clearly scripted, clearly were running the ball with Jaden Baugh. No explosives on that play turns into a touchdown. But the next 4 drives, they had a 23-yard pass to Sturdivant, so an explosive play to him. That was the one where Lagway sort of threw the ball off his hip. They get a field goal on that one. They get the 20-yard pass to Hansen, and that's the one where Hansen had the fumble. But what that sort of showed me, those were both against zones. Those were both things where Texas was dropping guys into zones and Lagway was hitting the appropriate guy against the zone, which suggests that he did take the week off to slow things down and really look at what opposing defenses were doing to him. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the explosive plays for Florida go 23, 20, then 60 and 55. Like those 60 and 55, that was one-on-one coverage, man coverage that Texas put on those guys, and Lagway made them pay. And what happens is when you run the ball and when you show that you will pick the opposing defense apart when they play zone, they all of a sudden have to creep that safety up, and they're going to challenge their corners. And it turns out when the corners challenge DJ Lagway, he wins a lot. And, does that mean you might get a stupid interception every once in a while? Yeah. Does that mean you might have a 3 and out because you take a deep shot and then, especially with Billy Napier, he's going to throw a screen pass on 2nd and 10? Yes. However, those deep shots are extraordinarily valuable, and that's how you go from scoring like 12 points a game to scoring 29 points in this one against the best defense in the country, or at least what was the best defense in the country, is you've got a quarterback who's not afraid of going after it, but is patient enough to wait. For the most part, patient enough to wait for the defense to give him those shots. And then when they opened it up and gave him those opportunities, he took them, and quite honestly, he hit them quite a bit.
Yeah, Will, some stats here for Lagway. He passed for a season-high 298 yards. That's the 3rd highest total of his career, and 2 touchdowns, of course. As a recap, went 21 to 28. He's the only SEC quarterback to complete 75% of his passes while throwing for over 250 yards and tossing multiple touchdowns in a conference game this season. So it came together at the right time. His 75% completion percentage in week 6 is tied for the highest in SEC play this season. And, while his 180.8 rating is 3rd best of any SEC quarterback in conference play this season. And then kind of zooming back out, we give the offensive line their props. Well, here it was. Allowed 0 sacks, just 3 tackles for loss in the win over Texas. And then also limited the Longhorns to a season-low 6 quarterback pressures for them. So, to me, it did start up front. Like I said, you could have had this plan. You could have had these plays. And if the offensive line didn't execute from what we saw against Long Island and, of course, Miami, coming off of that game, we saw it from game 1 where this offensive line just didn't look right. But, okay, some dismissed it because it was just game 1 in the season. Well, no, that was kind of a worrisome. And then it continued through USF and LSU and really just kind of came to a head against Miami and one of the best defensive fronts in the country right now. But this offensive line really did their job. And I think it starts there. Allow Lagway to have some time to get those 55-yard. And, that one to Vernell Brown III, he had the time he needed to. As you said, he had time to look off the safety. He had time to get the ball down the field. And that catch and run by Vernell Brown, to me, that doesn't look like a catch and run where the way he just kind of plucks it out of there. Most of the time, you just fall down after a catch like that. But no, he plucks it over the defender, gets about 10 or 15 more yards. And that's an example of just 2 freshmen out there just blowing it up when the first time they're on the field together. Certainly screams to how special those guys can be together. But really, really starts up front for me.
Yeah, it turns out practicing one-on-ones is helpful. Like I think that's what we've learned, right? Is that DJ Lagway, first time he went ones-on-ones. I do wonder how often if that's the first time he's done ones-on-ones, that's the first time any of these guys did ones-on-ones in a month, right? I mean, if Lagway's not in there doing it, unless he's been in a boot and they haven't been doing one-on-one, when he's been in there, the reality is that they haven't done a lot of that. So I think that benefited everybody, right? I mean, the iron sharpen iron stuff is a little bit overused at times, but in this case, I think, the reality is when you're getting your butt kicked by people and you're kind of non-competitive, at some point, it's a hell of a lot harder to block Tyreek Sapp than it is to block whoever the backup is for Florida. Now, turns out some of those backups are really, really good in this game. So I think Florida was challenged. They had their backs against the wall. They clearly love Billy Napier, which I think flummoxes a lot of Florida fans who at this point are ready to kick him to the curb. But they clearly love the guy.
Yeah.
And they play for him like nobody's business. But, there were all those memes after the game or like even during the game where it was Billy Napier turns into Nick Saban whenever he's got 3 losses. It's like, too late. You got to get so thrilled that the team got the win. I've said repeatedly, I'm not going to root against Florida. I want Florida to do well. I know there's a camp of folks who are hoping for a change at head coach here on Monday, and we're certainly not getting that. I think there's also a series of people who are worried that Florida's going to go on a run. And that, it's going to be a tough decision for people to make. And you're going to have sort of the Mike White arguments all over again when the season ends. We'll get there if we get there. I think, the road record of William Napier suggests that that's going to be a massive undertaking to get that all the way through. But for 1 week, this team showed us everything that we thought they were coming into the season. And how ironic is it that if you had told me before the season that Florida was going to dominate Texas in the 5th game of the year, I would have been like, we're going to the playoffs. And instead, we're 2-3 somehow.
And you beating Texas caused them to be unranked.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's look, there's plenty for Florida to play for, but just like in Napier's games, and even in this game against Texas, there's very little margin for error.
Yeah.
Like this game was way closer than it should have been because of a lot of different things that went on. Some of it turnover related. I think some of it conservative play calling related. The one specifically that sticks out to me is after they hit the big shot to Brown, they got a false start and then they sort of went into a turtle shell because they wanted to make it a 15-point game. And, I get it. I understand the math. 15 it's hard for the other team to beat you at that point, at least in regulation. But Florida was, especially after that personal foul against the face, if they don't get Manning down, that game was awfully close to be, considering that I think Florida going to the 4th quarter had like 200 more yards of offense than Texas did and up by 15 points. That's the kind of profile where you hope to win by 24, 26, 28 by the time the game's over and really salt it away. Florida not able to do that. And, a little disappointing on that side. But again, I think considering that it's a 1-3 team coming in and playing that Texas team, you got to be happy with the W no matter how you get it.
Yep. Let's go to the other side, Will, and kind of where this defense is after this Texas game. Let's see, through 5 games, of course, ranking 24th in the FBS in total defense, giving up 295.6 yards per game and 26th in scoring defense with 17 points per game. Additionally, the Gator defense ranks 10th in FBS in first down defense, 26th in rushing defense, giving up 99.4 yards a game, and then 28th in third down conversion defense. Will, there we go. For all the years we had to go, with Todd Grantham and see how bad third and Grantham can be, and even after that, with some defensive coordinator and head coaching changes, and the Patrick Toney and the Austin Armstrong. And right now, Gators 28th in third down conversion defense, 31.9%. 46th in passing efficiency defense, 120.3, and 49th in passing defense, 196.2. I mean, and that lends itself to PFF grades right here. Entering week 7, Florida has the number 17 overall defense in the FBS per PFF with a 91.4 grade and featuring the third highest tackling grade, 90.1, and sixth best run defense grade, 93, with a grade of 93 in the nation. So 6 in run defense in the nation. The Gators are one of 4 teams in FBS to have a top 10 tackling and run defense grade, and one of 2 in the SEC, the other being Georgia. Florida's defense grades 4th in the SEC behind Texas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, according to PFF. So, a couple, as you said, it's let Texas back in it, but what a dominant performance in the first half. Basically, and almost like you said, first 3 quarters. And it was good to see because you had some young guys emerging up front Tyreek Sapp certainly played his best game of the season, but then you had guys like Brian Taylor showing up and playing by far his best game of his career, making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Cam James, while the stat line may not show it, drew maybe 2 holding calls, I think, off the top of my head, if I remember right. So certainly hurting Texas in that regard, but some really, really good play up front, Will, for the Gators when you weren't sure they were going to get it with all the injuries. Some guys did come back and really made their presence felt, but certainly starting up front there for the Gators.
Yeah, well, it's good that Florida was able to get pressure because when they weren't able to get pressure, they got picked apart quite a bit on the back end, specifically Cormani McClain. You had a lot of really good stats there. I think Florida's defense is outperforming its underlying metrics in some capacity. If you look at yards per play, which is one I usually look at quite a bit, they're 65th in the country. If you look at adjusted EPA per play, they're right at what would be considered average in the country. And I think that's kind of right. Like, I think the defense has had significant spurts at times, but there have also been times where the defense has given up stuff where you're like, because we've watched so much bad defense in Gainesville over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think, we're quick to forgive. These are not Will Muschamp defenses. These are not Jim McElwain 2015, 2016 defenses. This is a average to good defense that seems to tire out in the second half. And they got manhandled in the fourth quarter with USF. Certainly the offense didn't do them any favors with LSU and Miami. They played really well against Miami, but this one, they got sort of worn out there in the second half, and Texas was able to move the ball. Thankfully, Manning threw it to him a couple of times and ended some drives that if Texas had converted into points, then that game's even closer. They're almost in field goal range on that last drive. Yeah. If they'd had a couple more instead of the interceptions, if they'd have just punted the ball away and put Florida in poor field position or something like that, you can envision the scenario for the game being a little bit different. So I don't want to crap on the defense because it has been the bright unit of the two, but to be a championship level team. And that's really what we've talked about in terms of, Napier was talking about all offseason. That's what, that's what the expectations are. And honestly, if they're going to run the table and end up 9-3 for the rest of the year, they need a championship level defense. It's not there yet. They have not shown that yet. And I think even some of the stats you cited, you're talking like 42nd, 49th, that sort of stuff in the country, right? Like you look at those Muschamp defenses, like 4th, 6th, 1st, those were defenses that when you had an offense like Florida had been in the first 4 games, you were winning those games, right? USF was not getting a game-winning field goal drive against any of those defenses back in 2014, 2015, 2016. Well, maybe 2014, but 2015 and 2016. And so, again, not a bad defense. I think the defensive line especially really stepped up in this one. But you take the overall, I think most Florida fans give the defense a pass in everything that's gone on in the first 4 games, and I'm a little bit hesitant to do that. I think they've been the better of the 2 units, but I don't know if they've been championship level. And honestly, that's kind of what we needed while the offense found its sea legs. Hopefully the offense has found those sea legs, and the defense being sort of where it's at is good enough to go on a run. But, going on the road, that might not be the case.
Yeah, and Gator Nation 2.0 does point out too, Manning missed a lot of wide open guys too. 4 touchdowns, of course, but yeah, you go back to that and even their trick play as well. Yeah, so
he was a little open.
Yeah, it was a little open there. So, but yeah, like you said, I mean, but their first half performance, like I said, Florida won the game in the first half, and that was because they were able to play very well on both sides of the ball, but especially on defense, just completely just shutting down Texas in the first half of the game.
So one thing I will say is Ernest Graham's my favorite Gator ever because I played against him in high school. Miles Graham might be my second favorite Florida player ever. That guy was all over the field, especially in the first half. There's one play I've seen on Twitter. I saw it live, and they actually gave the tackle to Devin Moore, or the announcers did. They said Devin Moore made the tackle because he fell on him after Graham brought him down. I think because they didn't believe that Graham was strong enough to pull him down with one arm. Like, he took an angle where he was a little bit behind him, and then he sort of calf roped him and pulled him down. And the announcers were like, "Oh, Devin Moore did a great job getting him down there." It's like, nah, that was Miles Graham, guys. Like, that guy is a beast. So
yeah,
I mean, Florida has a lot of really good players on the defensive side of the ball. They've made the key plays for the most part when they've had to keep the team in the game when the offense is struggling. I mean, Lagway throws that ball right back to Texas. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that has to be deflating for the defense, right? Just sitting there going, we just got what looked like a game-sealing interception, handed the ball back to you. Go make it 32-14, and this game's completely over, right? And instead, you hand it right back to them. That's got to be demoralizing in some capacity. So I guess as I'm sitting here talking, I'm talking myself into being more forgiving on the defense because they have had to deal with such a putrid offense all year long. But at the same time, I mean, if I look at this one overall, Texas averaged 5.9 yards per play.
Yeah.
That is 67th, 68th in the country. So, if you think Texas has an awesome offense, that's a pretty good performance against the Longhorns. If you think Texas has a so-so offense, not so great. Now, you mentioned the first half. They gave up 3.8 yards per play in the first half, but what that means is they gave up 8.4 yards per play in the third quarter and 6.4 yards per play in the fourth quarter. Those two turnovers really did, especially the second one, really did make a difference in terms of Florida's defense being able to deliver in this one. And, I don't think they're going to be able to get away with a first half, second half on the road where there are splits like that. I think they're going to have to come out and play a full, complete game because I don't think the offense, without the advantage of the crowd and without, with the crowd going nuts and not being able to have a snap count and all that sort of stuff, I don't think the offense is going to be as effective as it was this past week. And so the defense is going to have to be that much better.
All right, so coming out of the Texas game, before we take a look forward, DJ Lagway was named SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Dallas Wilson earned SEC Freshman of the Week award, and Taylor Spirito brought home the SEC Co-Special Teams Player of the Week. Well, that brings up another line of thinking when we go, hey, great, Florida blocks a punt. Seems like it has been forever since we have seen that because it has been forever. But with that, Florida gets the ball in great field position, and you're not able to take advantage of fully of the block punt. You get the safety, and that really changed Texas's plan there late in the game. So if they would have scored, they would have had to go for 2. So a lot would have had to happen for the game to go into overtime. But a special teams play. I mean, look, we've had to joke about special teams so many times in the Billy Napier era, but this one right here. In a big game, when things needed to come together, you get the block punt.
So first off, I thought Lagway played really, really well. Dallas Wilson needed to be the player of the week.
You were not the only person. When I tweeted that, somebody else told me about that. They said, yeah, that needed to happen.
And then the second thing is there were 11 guys on the field. And it turns out when there's 11 guys on the field, you can do – I mean, the fact that they went after the punt is curious, right? Again, I think – the Napier era, and one of the things that's frustrated the fans is, and I always talk about this when it comes to work or any sort of organization, is does the audio match the video, right? And Napier came in here talking about scared money don't make money, talked about all that sort of stuff. The Tennessee game in that first year was something where like he's going for it on fourth down all the time, really getting a bunch of extra edges for his team. And we just haven't seen that since. So to have a special teams play turn the game in the other direction, and quite honestly, Florida a little bit unlucky that ball went all the way back into the end zone. I mean, most of the time that ball doesn't go 30 yards back into the end zone. It's an opportunity for either Florida to jump on it and have a short field, or for Florida to even recover it and bring it into the end zone. So a little bit unlucky to only come away with 2 points there. But again, I think given sort of what they were trying to do, they went after the knockout there. I mean, right? I mean, if they block that punt and they take it in for a touchdown, that's probably a KO for Texas. And so at least they were going for it, and that's awesome. I mean, it's awesome to see special teams actually make a difference. It's awesome to see, it's just awesome to see something where it doesn't go bad on special teams. Like it's kind of what I said about the defense, right? Like we've seen so much bad defense over the last few years that just like competent defense gets us excited. Same thing. We've seen so much ridiculousness on special teams over the last few years that just competent gets us excited. So you block a punt and, have somebody as the SEC player of the week on special teams. Like, holy moly, what's going on? Must have really gotten that game in the bag if the special teams is showing up like that.
Yep, his block punt to force to force the safety in the second quarter. It marked, so it hadn't been forever, but it has been forever in SEC play. It marked Florida's first block punt since Derek Wingo versus Charlotte in 2023, and the Gators' first safety since FSU in 2023. The play also represented Florida's first block punt in SEC play since Jordan Pouncey at LSU in 2021. So,
well, plus considerable growth that after the safety, we didn't run that god awful trick play where they run like a fake in and around and then flip it back to the quarterback and then chuck it into the stands for an intentional grounding. Growth, Dave. Growth.
Yeah, it was 3 and out, but still growth. You're right, because you didn't turn the ball over. But we will take a look forward just a little bit on avoiding a letdown after getting this big win. Like Napier said, he wants to see it multiply. We'll get into all that, and kind of looking forward to the Texas A&M game as well. But before we do, let's hear from our good friends at MyBookie. You get in on the action there, guys. And hey, just talking about it right here. Florida travels to College Station to take on Texas A&M, and the Aggies are currently favored by 7 points on MyBookie, and the over/under set at 46.5. So a little bit low on the low end there. Well, look, you can go bet it at MyBookie. We're far enough into the season now, so the trends are, they're starting to take shape right there in the betting world. One account, one wallet, bet football all weekend, then spend some time hitting the slots. Play those casino games at MyBookie. You don't have to switch apps. No jumping around on different platforms. Just straight up action right there at mybookie.ag. Get it on the NFL action too. They have it all under one roof. Game lines, player props, and more. Look, if you're new to MyBookie, use our promo code Gators, and your first bet up to $500 is fully covered. You make your play. If it doesn't hit, you get it right back with the bet back bonus. So sign up at mybookie.ag with promo code Gators and claim your bet back bonus. What you think, Will? 7 points there?
I mean, I'm looking forward to placing bets myself. That's what I'm saying there, Dave.
There we go. So, all right, let's continue on with Billy Napier and just kind of the storyline. You get the big win over Texas. It is the bye week. We saw Florida start playing better ball last year. It equaled, playing better against UCF, and then Florida loses to Tennessee, but you started to see the team play better. Well, Florida goes on the road to play the number 5 Texas A&M Aggies.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we won't have that issue. In my opinion, I think this has got a chance to be a multiplier. I'm hopeful that it will. I talked a little bit about that in the locker room after the game. Obviously, yesterday with the assistant coaches that had a chance to be around players, and then we'll start working on that today. But in general, we handled adversity well. Now we've got to handle some success. So it's all about earning the right to win throughout the week. I think you got to prepare a certain way. and then ultimately get in position to where you can play with some confidence and go execute. So I think that we got a group that understands that, and I'm hopeful that this will be a multiplier and maybe not a distraction.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to take it, the positivity here, Will, and I think confidence is probably the best part about this. I mean, first of all, this team had confidence enough to go into the bye week and go fix some things. There was no giving up on the season. They had the confidence that they could be that team that we were trying to label so much on in the preseason, and now some actual confidence of beating a top team, whether you believe Texas is or not. You have to take that mindset as a player if you're Florida. And, I think take some confidence in the way you played. I mean, this was a really, really good performance, especially for the offense. And it's the first time we've seen anything close to it all season long. And it was the guys that you expected to show up. It was your quarterback. It was Lagway. It was, some of the best receivers you've recruited, Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown III. And with those two guys out there, J. Michael Sturvitt played one of his best games of his career in a Gator uniform at the same time. The offensive line playing their best game. So, yeah, if you look, to me, the key word is confidence. I mean, that's what has to come out of this. Now, look, Florida can be confident. Florida can go play a good game and still go lose to Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a good team in their own right. But we know what good football looks like. We know what good football looks like this season. We know what bad football looks like this season. We're going to know if this Gator team is, up for some kind of challenge when they go to College Station on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, look, so Florida's going to have to go against a lot of trends. I mean, the team is 5-15 away from the swamp in the Billy Napier era, right? And that's just sort of that is the reality, is that Florida has struggled when they have been asked to go on the road and play against teams that are quality. And Texas A&M is a quality team. So you get the win here at the swamp against Texas. But the question is, are you going to get the win on the road against Texas A&M? It's a very different animal. And you can maybe deal with a play or two of inconsistency or a play or two where things don't exactly go your way. But even in this one, there were a couple of false starts where, like, the false starts at home really are probably going to be exacerbated on the road. You can expect a couple of holding calls you're going to get on the road that probably don't get called at home just because of the crowd, the noise, and how involved they are. Lagway's health is a big question for me coming into this one, right? I joked about it, but the guy had a calf injury that kept him out of camp. That's why he wasn't doing ones-on-ones to start with there in the spring. And he came up gimpy. I was concerned he wasn't going to come back in that game against Texas. And, he came in and he gutted it out. But, those calf injuries obviously if he re-injured it, and I don't know exactly what the extent of that injury is, but if he re-injured that calf injury, that's something he's going to be dealing with the whole rest of the year, right? And so needing to be consistent for that. And the other thing is, now there's a week of tape for Texas A&M to go back and look at and say, okay, what did Florida do coming out of the bye week?
Right.
And so Florida had 2 weeks to prepare for Texas. They had 2 weeks to make sure that they had counters for everything that Texas was going to throw at them. I think they did a pretty nice job of putting their players in a situation to succeed. And the question is going to be, now Mike Elko has an entire week to look at that film to understand what Florida did, how Florida changed things from 1 week to the next. And I think he'll have his team ready to go to be able to understand that, look, Florida's going to come out and they're going to try to hit you in the mouth. But if they hit you in the mouth, you're going to have to respond. I don't think Texas was ready for it. I expect Texas A&M is going to be ready for it, which doesn't mean Florida's going to lose this game, but it means they have to overcome the fact that they tend to get stuck in some of their tendencies, right? They tend to do, hey, that worked. We'll do that over and over and over again. Well, the Texas game was a building block. The question is, what's the next block, right? What's the next thing you're going to do? And I think they're going to have to do some unique things. I referenced the Tennessee game back in Napier's first year early. I think they might have to be really aggressive on fourth downs. I think they're going to have to really make sure that every time they get past the 40, they're just going for it irrespective. I think they're going to have to make sure they maximize their deep shots. And certainly I think they might even have to punt a few times in the first quarter while they're establishing Jaden Baugh, so that in the fourth quarter, I almost think it's like the Florida State, I think Will Muschamp with Gillisley, when they went to Tallahassee and won that game. That was something where early in the game I can remember Florida sort of running into the line of scrimmage and Florida State stopping Gillislee. You get the Antonio Morrison turnover on a big hit on E.J. Manuel, get the fumble, and then Gillislee puts the game away when he finally breaks one through. That's the kind of thing I think we're going to have to see, but that requires a commitment to running the ball that Florida's only shown once. And let's be honest, they scored early in this one. And so it's really easy to stay committed to the run when it's 10-0. And when you're able to put a touchdown on the board by giving the ball to Jaden Ball multiple times. I think the question is going to be when it's 13-10 and Florida's down and Texas A&M's just scored a touchdown to pull ahead, do you still go back to the run? Do you still go back to that identity? Or do you put the ball in Lagway's hands and say, go pick them apart? And,
what have we seen so far this year? Like, LSU wasn't a blowout. You went away from the run. Miami wasn't a blowout in the third quarter. You went away from the run. So, going to go to your point. Did you kind of just, like you said, did you find that during the bye week? Because it certainly does look like, hey, you started the Texas game that way. But history shows so far this season where if it's a close game and it's the second half, yeah, you weren't showing that before this past weekend.
Well, there's a pretty good follow on Twitter. I think he's a Gators Breakdown Plus member. His handle's Astute Alligator or something like that.
Oh, Astute,
and he tweeted before the Texas game that Napier had gotten to the Costanza tenure of his coaching career, where you just need to do the opposite, because if every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite must be right. And so the first few drives of that Texas game, he went full on Costanza, man. It's like, hey, we're going to stick with the run. We're going to, we're not going to take a bunch of deep shots to start with. I think there's some truth to that going against tendency matters in some of these things. And so they're going to have to put this one on Ball's back, and they're going to have to maybe even sacrifice a couple of opportunities just to say, you know what, we know that in the fourth quarter, we want Texas A&M to be tired. And the only way to do that is to try to impose our will on A&M with our offensive line and with our running back. And Ball gives you the ability to hopefully convert a few extra third downs, because he's got more wiggle than some of the other guys that are back there, and will put his shoulder down and get another extra couple of yards. But, that means the offensive line is going to have to come in ready to go. That means DJ Lagway is going to have to convert a couple of passes, right? I mean, he's going to have to throw a couple against the zones that Texas A&M is inevitably going to throw. And I do wonder, like, Texas came into this game, Bud Davis, pretty good follow on Twitter as well. He highlighted that Texas had played a lot of middle of the field close, single high coverage, cover 3 type coverages all year long. And when they fell behind, that's what they reverted to. I don't know if Texas A&M is going to do that. I think Texas A&M is just going to I think they'll probably resign themselves to, we're going to sit in the zone. We'll let Florida try to run us out of it. We don't think they can do that on the road for the entire game. And I think they're going to sit back in that zone, and they're going to make Lagway beat them in those sorts of things where he's been most uncomfortable. And again, like I said, I think that's some of the stuff that A&M's going to learn by watching tape for a week, is that when you give Lagway that look where he's got the opportunity to take the deep shot, he's going to hurt you. And so you really kind of need to take those looks away. And so, we've been talking for a month now how Florida hasn't taken the deep shot. I wouldn't be surprised if we go back to not taking the deep shot, just because I think Texas A&M is going to work pretty hard to take it away. And so then it's a question of, can Lagway execute underneath, and can Ball get the ball enough, and can the offensive line get enough push to make them come out of that configuration?
Here we go. So Florida faces its 4th top 10 team and 3rd top 5 opponent when they play Texas A&M this week. Will, 5 of Florida's remaining 7 games are against AP top 25 opponents, including 4 in the top 12. Here's Billy Napier on the challenge of the schedule.
Look, this is who we've played in the past. We're very familiar with these teams. The players know each other. The coaches obviously know each other and respect each other. So these are teams we played just 1 year ago, and we're very familiar with the scheme, the personnel, the venue, right? We know what it's going to be like. So we're capable. I mean, I think that's the big thing, is you wake up knowing that you've got the tools to do it. It's just going to be about who plays the best that day. And that's reality in college football right now is you got to be ready to go each week. So independent of the opponent, this is a heck of a challenge.
Yes, there we go. We know road game. We've already hit that, and I've already hit the stat so much coming into this year. He was going to have to do, even if we thought Florida was going to be a really good team, Billy Napier was going to have to do something he's never done before, and that's beat a team that finishes the season with a winning record. Well, there we go. Texas A&M more than likely is going to finish the season with a winning record. So Billy Napier get his first win on the road in that scenario. Will Texas A&M earned its second conference win of the season. They improved to 5-0 after handling Mississippi State 31-9 last week. I thought that was one of the easiest bets ever, and that's why Vegas has all those nice casinos in there, because of fools like me who would bet, Texas A&M not to cover versus Mississippi State. I think the line was something like around 15 or something like that. Oh, Mississippi State to cover that. No, it was 31-9 Texas A&M. Well, here's what stands out about Texas A&M the last two games. And I know this has been shared a good bit out there. They've played Auburn. They've played Mississippi State the last 2 weeks. Mississippi State, okay offense. Auburn, putrid offense. But anyway, this is impressive no matter who they're playing. Their third down defense, Will, the last two games, with third and fourth down. My bad. Third and fourth down in SEC play. 1 for 25. They've given up one. I don't know if it was a third or fourth down, but either way, 1 of 25. I know Auburn was 0 for last week, so Mississippi State was almost 0 for. That's ridiculous. And Florida is coming off their best third down performance of the season, but Florida's overall third down offense, not very good this year. And you're going against a team who is very good on third down defense. So we'll see what it means. There was a lot of, who has Texas played? They haven't played anybody. Okay, and Florida looks like they took advantage. Well, Texas A&M, you could say they played nobody, but still, those SEC opponents are much better than the 3 teams Texas played coming in to last week. Like I said, it's hard to do no matter who you play, but in third and fourth down conversions, the last 2 weeks, teams are only 1 for 25 against the Texas A&M defense.
See, the funny part is when you said 1 for 25, I thought you were talking about Florida against Miami, because that's sort of what it was. I think they were like 0 for 13, 0 for 14, something like that. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, this is the old unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, right? I think, I think Texas. So this is sort of a little bit boy cry wolf, because I said all week that Texas had the best defense in the country and Florida shredded them. Florida has the capability of shredding anybody on the offensive side of the ball. The question is, can they come out and play like they did? Does Dallas Wilson really make that big a difference? Are they able to commit to Jaden Ball? Can the offensive line show some dominance? Again, I think 2 weeks in a row, that becomes a little bit more difficult. You're not as fresh coming out after a week. And honestly, it's probably hard from an emotional standpoint. Like, you built up into that when, we even saw some of the staff members popping off on Twitter after the win. And so the us against the world mentality was real, I think, for this team coming into this game. I think they expected Napier to get booed in this one. I think they were a little bit worried about that the fans, that it could get ugly if things stayed close, or if Texas jumped out ahead. And they didn't allow that to happen. Going on the road, are they a little bit more comfortable? All that sort of stuff are things I'd be looking for. I'll tell you, the key to me for this game is actually on the other side of the ball. Mm-hmm. If you look at Texas A&M, they scored 42, 44, 41, 16, and 31 points. And here's the average rushing yards per rush for Marcel Reed: 4.9, 6.6, 5.3, negative 3.3, and 5.0. Auburn kept him in the pocket. Auburn sacked him. Auburn prevented him from using his legs to bring value. He's actually been really good in terms of yards per attempt in every game. He was the worst against Utah State and Mississippi State, but he's been above average in all of those sorts of things. It's the rushing that makes this guy special, because he prolongs drives. You saw it in the Notre Dame game. He sort of, he found his way around to convert touchdowns when Notre Dame had the initial play sniffed out. Now, look, they did absolutely hold Notre Dame on the last touchdown play. However, they sneak out of South Bend with a win because of Marcel Reed. And so, this is a new and unique challenge for Florida's defense. I've been talking all year about how Florida has they have drawn lucky this year to not be facing the best quarterbacks in the conference, at least in the first half of the year. Things are sort of flipped. Marcel Reed is one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, 154 QB rating, 1.05 yards. So he's not like Heisman level, but he's been very, very good. And then as you start going into the schedule a little bit later, I don't think Gunnar Stockton's that great, and Blake Shapen, certainly Cutter Boley at Kentucky, not necessarily great. But you're going to run into Trinidad Chambliss or whoever ends up playing for Ole Miss, who's going to be lighting it up. And then obviously, you got whatever Florida State's going to be bringing with Castellanos. I think this one is one where I just worry about the running game keeping things alive. And like I said, Florida's defense has been pretty susceptible to big plays thus far, especially like the really big ones, right? Like the 45 to 50 to 55-yard plays that skew their yards per play in a way that probably skews my opinion of what the defense is. At the same time, Manning had like a 36 or 37-yard run that skewed his rushing yards really positively in this one as well. So that's what I would look at. I'd say the only time that Texas A&M got stopped all year long was when an Auburn defense was able to keep Marcel Reed from running all over the place. If he runs for 3, 4, 5 yards a rush, Florida's doomed because they're going to go up a boatload of points because they can score 40 pretty easily when he's doing that. And, as much as I like the changes that Florida's made on the offensive side of the ball since the bye week, I think winning a 42-40 game is probably not in the cards. And so, hopefully this one's more like a 27-24 type game.
Yeah, they scored 31 points against Mississippi State. They didn't score a touchdown until right before halftime. So it lets you know how explosive they got in the second half of that game for the Aggies. So, yeah, certainly it is an interesting matchup. It really is. Elko and his defensive, prowess against, Florida coming off the best game of the season. Unlike you, I do wonder how healthy Lagway is, but we just saw him play, like you said. I mean, there's something about playing on one leg, and maybe that's just, something to it. But certainly interesting matchup with what we just saw from Florida against, some of those stats we just laid out for Texas A&M calls for a pretty interesting matchup. And it being on the road, of course, I think is the key cog here just because of the history of Billy Napier and his Gators on the road. But, man, interesting matchup here, Will. And I think it's going to tell us a lot about, this team. I mean, go, like I said, go perform well. I mean, you can play well and lose this game. That is certainly possible. I think Florida can be a better team since the bye week, and like Tennessee last year, you can just go and you can lose the game anyway. But at the same time, maybe this team has found something, and you can also, this is a game you can win. As you mentioned, 16-10 versus Auburn. They had a squeak versus Notre Dame. Maybe coulda, shoulda, woulda. Not won that game against Notre Dame, but they found a way to come out with that. So, interesting team here, the Aggies.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is that I disagree with you in what you just said in terms of you can play well and still lose this game. Florida has lost that privilege by the way they opened the season.
Oh, no. I don't mean excuse it. I just mean that can actually happen.
Well, I mean, I suppose, but no. I mean, I think play well
I guess I
means
get what you're saying.
Play well means you win the game.
Okay.
Play well means you go out like you have put yourself in the position where you have to run the table in order to accomplish what this team should have been able to accomplish when we look at the talent level and when we look at what they just did to Texas, right? And so from that standpoint, playing well does not mean, we lost on a field goal and yay, we went on the road and, it was close. No, you didn't play well enough, right? I won't say they played well if they lose the game, unless it's on like some freak thing for an official or something like that. Right? I think the reality is that you, by virtue of the way you played in the first 4 games, have given yourself zero margin for error and zero margin for grace when you don't get the job done. I don't care if you win this game 3-0 or if you win the game 73-70. Like you have to win this game to consider it playing well. So whether you get blown out 34-3 or whether you lose 21-20 on a missed last second field goal. You can lose 21-20 when you don't lose 3 of the first 4 games. You can't lose 20. You already did that. You already lost the close one to USF. You already lost a relatively close one to LSU. You already lost one that was reasonably close in the fourth quarter against Miami. You've done that. Like that is not success, irrespective of whether we look better than we did earlier in the year. So I just sort of look at that premise and I go, playing well means winning the game. It doesn't matter what the score is. It doesn't matter whether it'd be nice if we don't spit in somebody's face and give them like an easy path to a game-winning field goal. But if they just bust a big play and get that game-winning field goal, didn't play well.
No, I get you. I was in a bubble, I guess is where I was thinking. Big picture, you're absolutely right. Like there is no grace for it. I mean, there's
plenty of grace. We've given 3 weeks worth of grace.
I mean, look, there's not much grace sitting at 2-3 right now. There's definitely not going to be any grace when you're 2-4. So,
well, hey, hopefully they get the job done. Hopefully I come back in here and say they played well. I want them to play well. I want them to win the game. I'd love for them to go in there and just put a beat down on the Aggies, right? And I think there's an opportunity for Florida to build momentum on the win over Texas. There's an opportunity for them to sort of, and maybe in some ways even like sigh a little bit, because it almost felt like the pressure was getting ratcheted up, and they were able to release that a little bit on Saturday in the Swamp. And maybe that release is going to allow them to play free and allow them to play well. And by well, I mean win against Texas A&M. I'll believe it when I see it. 5-15 so far on the road, 0-2 this year on the road. A&M is up there with I think A&M's better than LSU. I don't know whether they're better than Miami. Miami surprised me a little bit with how well they've played over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so I think there's a case to be made that Florida's played a very good Miami team, but those losses against LSU and USF are just going to haunt this team if they have any other close losses along the way. So don't let it be close. Keep the pedal down. You get up, 19-7 or whatever it was in the Texas game. Keep your foot on the pedal, because especially on the road, the momentum can switch right off, in a nanosecond. And Marcel Reed keeps a couple of plays alive. You hit a big one, and now Florida's behind instead of being able to nurse that lead that they've got. So, do I have a lot of confidence that that's what will happen? No. I ended my article with saying I'm not ready to let Billy hurt me again, and I'm not. But like I also said after the loss against Miami, I was like, there's this weird kind of self-loathing where I just had that little hope right in the back of my head that things are going to turn around, and that probably makes me stupid, but it also makes me a fan. And it's still there. There's still an opportunity to run the table. Until there's not, I'm going to keep hoping for it, keep rooting for it, and hopefully we see it.
Interesting. Like, here's the thing. The chances of a team going undefeated in the SEC, I think, are very, very slim. But you start looking at A&M's schedule. Florida, at Arkansas, at LSU. They have 3 straight road games, Will, at Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri. There is a bye week in there between LSU and Missouri, but still 3 straight road games after this game. Then South Carolina, Samford, at Texas. They're going to be favored in every – if it kind of lives up to what it is now, they'll be favored. Like they would be favored in every game right now. At Missouri will probably be close, but they'll be favored. They're favored against the rest of their schedule right now. And I tell myself, nobody's going undefeated in the SEC this year. So is that
Dave.
Is it
you're letting Billy hurt you again. You're opening yourself up.
No, I'm not. This is a road game. I'm not taking it.
You were opening yourself up again, buddy. You're gonna pick A&M, but then you're gonna sit down in front of your TV and be like, maybe by Friday.
Yes.
By Friday, you're gonna be like, oh well, like if everything lines up just right. I'm not ready.
Do you agree with that? Like, do you agree with that notion at all, though? Like, nobody's going undefeated in the SEC, so who do they lose to? Is it Florida? Is it Arkansas? At LSU? At Missouri? Right now, they're much better than what we've seen from the other teams on the schedule.
Well, so that Samford game looks like a trap game, clearly. I think if you're going to really pinpoint, like if you're gambling, like if you're going to my bookie and helping support Gators Breakdown and you're gambling, what I would say is the places where you would want to bet against SEC teams is on the road late in the season. On the road late in the season, both teams tend to have a bunch of injuries. It evens things out. And if you run into a quarterback who happens to have a good day, so who are you grinning about there?
At Texas, last game of the season.
Arch will finally put it together, man. The Texas fans have that little thing in the back of their heads going, oh, he'll finally do it. He'll finally do it. And, we'll see. Yeah, I think Manning has the ability to put that together. The question is, will he? And, I think Texas fans are asking a lot of the same questions that Florida fans have been asking about Lagway, right? And you see the potential, you see the rating, you see all that stuff. You saw what he did last year and go, where has that been? Like, where has that consistency been? So, yeah, I mean, again, on the road late in the year is when if you have an SEC team that you think might run the table. I mean, just look at Ole Miss last year. Right? Yeah. Like, I don't think Florida had any business beating that team last year, but in the swamp, Lagway plays lights out. Dart throws a couple interceptions late, and, Florida sends him home crying. And, it was awesome to see. And, we'll see if they can do it again.
Yeah. Interesting schedule there, though. I mean, they've already played, I didn't realize their SEC schedule was not all that hard.
Yeah, this has been one of the real weaknesses. This is why the 9-game schedule is actually going to be kind of nice. Yeah. Is I get that we sort of poo-pooed it when they brought it out and said, "Oh, Kentucky and South Carolina, great." But what it is going to do is it's going to make it a little bit more fair because Missouri has been running to 10 wins for the last 5 years because they haven't played anybody. Yeah. And
interesting game this weekend with them. They got Bama.
Yeah, well, and we'll see because Bama's coming off the Pavia Bowl. And so they might be a little bit down too. But
man, what about this stretch for Bama? Georgia, Vandy, Missouri, Tennessee.
The funny part is 10 years ago, that would have been 2 cupcakes. A team that's sort of middle of the pack in the SEC in Georgia, and a team that can't beat Florida and Tennessee. That would have been just a complete cakewalk for the Tide 10 years ago. And we would have been like, why is their schedule so easy? And a decade later,
now man, that's a tough 4-week stretch.
Well, and again, I think this is something I've been saying all year, really for the last 2 years. The SEC is the best quarterbacks are on the lesser talented teams. Now, Ty Simpson's been playing really well for Alabama. Mm-hmm. And if he really starts to show out, the Tide are going to be dangerous. He looked terrible against Florida State, and he's been slowly building to a point where he's probably one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. And so I think Alabama's pretty dangerous because of who they got at the quarterback position. And it looks like DeBoer sort of righted the ship there after that opening debacle. So, I mean, look, it's just like anything, right? I mean,
can't we say that game was a mirage now?
I mean, I guess. I mean, it's not Virginia or anything, but I mean, I think Alabama fans, let's say they drop a couple more games. I think Alabama fans are going to. Well, I think the Alabama fans are going to say the same thing Florida fans have done, which is, why did we come out of the gate so flat? Why was it like that, right? And so it's not just Florida that has this trouble. I think we look at it and I know you and I have both heard we never should have gotten rid of Mullen type talk. And, the problem is you never know with that next guy, right? Yep. And you never know if he's going to be a complete killer and if he's going to bring a national championship or whether you're going to sort of settle into mediocrity. And that's the fear, that you settle into mediocrity when you bring a new guy in. But as Todd Golden has proven on the basketball side, when you bring in the right guy, it doesn't take very long to turn it around, and all of a sudden you're up there with the elite. So, is DeBoer the right guy? Well, he's not Saban, right? I think that's the other part of the schedule you just laid out, is that
those days are gone, by the way.
Well, absolutely. I did my
not
kids
just
were,
for Bama. That's what I'm saying. I just college football now is.
Well, Lane said that specifically in an interview a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think. So I was talking to my kids about Saban because they were curious about it. And I told them that, they were asking, what his career was like, and told them about LSU. And then then he went to the NFL. and he didn't like that the players were paid and didn't do what he told them to do. So then he went to Alabama, won like 5 or 6 championships. And then he left because the players were getting paid and they wouldn't do what he told them to do. So, it's like there's a pattern here. So, it's a new era of college football, a new kind of coach. Like you said, no one's ever going to be that dominant. But if DeBoer has found his quarterback, like that was the problem, is Milroe was not the guy that DeBoer really wanted leading that offense last year. And if they've sort of circled the wagons after that Florida State loss, then, hey, there's an opportunity there. And I think, honestly, that's the same way for any program. Like, the disappointing part about the first 4 games for Florida this year is that we knew that Texas performance was in them. And so then it's a question of consistency, and it's a question of doing it week after week after week, which obviously has been a challenge in the Billy Napier era. Even the South Carolina game that you cited, as the biggest road win that Billy Napier's gotten, that's the one where we then followed that up with 5 straight losses, right?
Correct.
So consistency. Yep. And I mean, at this point, like I said earlier, wins.
And you brought up an interesting point. You brought up the South Carolina game, and then Florida went on that 5-game losing streak in 23. Well, let's go back a year before that. Florida wins on the road at A&M against Jimbo Fisher, by the way. Didn't they lose every game after that? Or was the South Carolina game at home? No, South Carolina at home was a win after that. Oh, yeah, because they won A&M and South Carolina back-to-back and then lost to Vandy. And should have beat that Florida State team. That was a good Florida State team. Florida should have won that game.
Yep.
So, yep. But, yeah, I mean, there you go.
5-15 on the road, buddy. Got to reverse it. Got to be 6-15. There's no other alternative.
The quick history of the wins are A&M in 22, South Carolina in 23, and Mississippi State last year. That's the only SEC wins on the road, and then FSU on the road last year.
And then there's the Tulane neutral site.
And then Tulane neutral site. That's the history. It's bad that we can just literally pull from our brains the road wins because there hasn't been many of them. You can literally keep up with them year by year.
Well, and the other part that as I'm remembering here, the South Carolina game looked over.
It did.
And then all of a sudden, Florida sort of caught fire. That the Florida State win last year was kind of lackluster, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was big win. I mean, in terms of points, but it wasn't like I didn't feel like Florida came out and was like crisp. The Tulane game, I'd actually say the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember who else did you cite there?
Mississippi State last year. So that probably was the best overall performance.
But even then, the defense gave up like 24 points, and now you did get the Mizell play called back on the weird illegal block.
And then the A&M game in 22.
That's the one where AR went nuts.
Yes.
He was like running around the corner and like just all of a sudden it looked like he was jogging, and he was like running by all those guys. So that one was a really solid win. That was one where you went, okay, there's something to build on here. And then Richardson went to the pros and
41-24. Yeah. So that probably is like South Carolina was probably the better team. I mean, marginally than that A&M game, than that A&M team, but for the performance.
Well, your point is there's no Bamas, there's no LSUs, there's no Miamis, there's no Georgias, there's none of those guys on the list, right?
Yep.
And that's the standard at Florida. Like you can't just get your butt handed to you by Georgia every year and expect us to be happy about it, right? Like so this is where it starts, right?
17-14 after the first quarter. And Florida won 21-14. I mean 41-14. Jesus, my bad. 41-24. I can't read stats tonight. Florida beat Texas A&M in 2022, 41-24. And it was 17-14 after the first quarter.
It is time to get. It is well past time to get the job done. Bring home a W. Eat it like Jameis Winston. Eat that W. Bring it home. Bring it home from Texas A&M.
How many yards did Florida have against Texas Saturday? I don't remember off the top of my head.
470 something, I think. 457.
Okay. 457. Reason I'm asking, Florida had 492 that game against A&M in 2022. Is that the highest SEC output?
I mean, under Napier, it's got to be, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean, under Napier.
I can't imagine they've gotten 500 yards under Napier. I mean, maybe against, like,
What was Mississippi?
Sharks.
Mississippi State last year?
I
No,
don't think so.
I mean, Mertz played too much in that game, so there's no way they got 500 yards.
Man, throwing shit.
I mean,
Mertz catching strays.
I didn't mean to, but live stat lookup on Gators Breakdown. So 45-28, and it was 503 yards.
Okay. I stand corrected.
Well, I do too, because I just, like you said, threw shade at Mertz for no reason.
There's a couple of reasons, but
he had 201 yards passing in that game, and Lagway played in that game too, right?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah,
but anyway, so
okay,
yes.
What was that rabbit hole we just went down? Yeah, 500 yards on the road at Mississippi State last year.
Yeah, but y'all said 62 yards passing on the road like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. And that was an awful Mississippi State team last year. So.
There is some stuff to prove. And look, the cool part is that you can only prove it with the teams in front of you. You can't do anything about 3 games you already lost.
Yeah.
You can't. Honestly, the Texas game means nothing now, too. I mean, the Texas game just means you have an opportunity this week to prove something that had you lost the Texas game, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to prove. So this is another step in terms of this team becoming who we all thought they could be coming into the season. Like I said, they've eliminated all margin for error in terms of the fan base, in terms of expectations, but they haven't eliminated all chance, right? And I think we talked a couple of weeks ago about Strickland and Napier and that sort of stuff, and that Strickland wanted to give Napier every chance until there was no hope to get to a playoff, to get where Florida, ultimately wanted to be. This Texas win gets them in that place where they have an opportunity. There's still hope to get to that place. Now, look, I think hope is relatively limited right now, given what we have coming up on the schedule. At the same time, it's not dead. And, until it's not, we need to be honest and say it's not. And the team has an opportunity to go out and prove all of us wrong who came out here almost catatonic after that Miami loss. For sure. All right, Will, good stuff, man. Man, we went down a rabbit hole at the end and everything. It was good. That was good. Hey, that's what you get when you tune in to Gators Breakdown Monday nights. We can't keep it to an hour, Dave. There's no way. It was an hour. It's like, we'll get done on time. Yeah. It's like, let's go look up stats from 2022.
I was like, I'm going to get off a little bit early, watch the Jags and Monday Night Football. They're down 14-7 at halftime, but well, there's a spot about 20 minutes ago where I completely lost my train of thought because the Dodgers are beating the Phillies, and I heard my kid upstairs, who's a huge Dodgers fan, that's right, going nuts. And he gets to go to school tomorrow wearing his Dodgers jersey with them up 2-0 in the series. So I definitely heard him. I don't know if it came across on the broadcast, but we could hear it. I did see somebody earlier say something about your mic. It's fine. So yeah, I screwed up and left my mic in my office at work. So we'll get that fixed. I'll be better. I'll get it fixed. Do not complain, people. You can understand clearly. Yes. Different. Yes. But hey, I mean, if Florida wins next week, you just have to do the episodes without the mic. Maybe you're just the poor listeners. What we do for the listeners. Good stuff. All right, everybody, you can find Will at Will Miles SEC right there on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and readandreaction.com. I'm the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for consuming, however you consume it, listening, watching, either way. Thank you for it all right here on Gators Breakdown.